Hey Star Trek fans, Dan Gunther here. Welcome to a new season of Star Trek Lower Decks Season 4. Really excited to get into this. The first episode is called Tuvix. Not quite the same title as the Voyager episode, TWO, the number 2 Vix. So, a sequel perhaps to that classic Voyager episode. Now, I do want to warn you at the top of the video here, there will be spoilers for the first episode of Season 4 of Star Trek Lower Decks, so if you've not yet watched it, make sure to go do so before watching this video. And with that, let's get into my thoughts on this episode. So we start out with the Cerritos being assigned to this mysterious mission in the Portella system, and there's some mystery surrounding it. We don't know what's going on, but we learn very quickly to Mariner's joy that they get to do something on Voyager. Yes, the USS Voyager from Star Trek Voyager, which will be making its way to Earth to be on display before taking its place at the Fleet Museum as we see it in Season 3 of Star Trek Picard. So basically they're going to be piloting Voyager to Earth during this episode. And we of course get to visit Voyager, and this of course makes Boimler extremely happy, or we expect that it would, but there's something kind of going on with him. At the beginning of the episode, he's told by Ransom to expect a promotion as long as things don't go sideways today, which kind of bums him out because things always go sideways. But there's something else bothering him, and that's one of the things that I really liked about this episode is the character work. The character development in Lower Decks has continued to surprise me in that, you know, they do a really good job of paying attention to these characters and really growing them in ways that you wouldn't expect in like this kind of comedic format. But coming into the 4th season, I really like these characters and I really care about them. It's clear that something's bothering him, and when, of course, things inevitably go sideways, it's up to Boimler to save the ship, and he's kind of discouraged. He doesn't really want a promotion, it seems, because he's worried about what happened at the end of Season 1 will happen again, that Mariner will be upset that he's being promoted, and that whole thing where he went off to the Titan that strained their friendship. He doesn't want that to happen again. And Mariner reveals that she's the one that recommended that he be promoted. And this lovely scene between them in the corridor of Voyager, with them kind of coming to terms with this, and Boimler realizing that Mariner wants what's best for Boimler and encourages him, and as Ransom says later, encourages him to be his best self. So then we get, you know, they save the day, they use a bunch of Voyager's past experiences in this whole thing, this basically amalgamation of a bunch of adventures from Voyager, and there's so many references to things. We'll get to that definitely later. I want to talk about all the Easter eggs and references, but for now, I just got to say I loved that human side of the story, that personal side of the story. And on the flip side of that, back on the Cerritos, we also have this character being Tuvixed. We get T'Ana and Billups becoming to Illups, and then learning what Janeway's solution was, which, as they say in this episode, is to straight up kill Tuvix. And so they don't want that to happen, so they start Tuvixing a whole bunch of the crew. And what I liked about this story was the ethical qualms that went with it, that, you know, Tendi especially is kind of the voice of not wanting to kill these people, not wanting to destroy them to get their friends back. And we have the new Vulcan character, T'Lyn, who has now joined the Cerritos crew, as we saw at the end of last season, who is arguing the logical side, right? The straight up dispassionate separate them to bring the original people back, similar to what Janeway decided to do. I really enjoy that kind of ethical back and forth and that little conflict between them, I guess. They do kind of end up resolving it at the end by just sweeping it under the table. They all get Tuvix together, so they're now no longer sentient. They're a big mass of flesh, and I guess it kind of sidesteps the ethical issue, but I still like that they gave some airtime to it, and we really got to see that kind of clash of worldviews between Tendi and T'Lyn, and also see them kind of grow closer together through this experience. And I have a feeling that T'Lyn's going to be a lot of fun to watch this season. She's very dispassionate, very, you know, plays the straight man, basically. but there's something there. And there's definitely, we saw, of course, when she was on the Vulcan ship in season 2, that she's outside the norm of the Vulcans. She has outbursts according to the Vulcans, very much not according to us emotional species, but still, I'm really eager to see kind of where that goes and her character development, which I'm sure we'll get over the course of the season. Other things I loved about the episode, the recreation of the Voyager sets. Those were gorgeous. We get to see a number of locations, the bridge, of course, astrometrics, engineering, all these different places aboard Voyager, beautifully recreated in this Lower Decks style, kind of similar to what we saw last season with Deep Space Nine. If that episode was a love letter to DS9, this one is very much a love letter to Voyager, and it is so much fun to see. I am a much bigger Deep Space Nine fan than I was of Voyager. Still enjoy Voyager, still Star Trek, still love it. But for those really hardcore Voyager fans out there who really, really love that show above all else, and I know there are a lot out there, I've spoken to many of them, they're going to love this episode. This episode is for you, and it's beautiful. So I really like that. The end of the episode sees promotions to Lieutenant Junior grade for Boimler, T'Lyn, Tendi, and Mariner, surprisingly, at the end, which is a nice little surprise. I love that in the promos for the season, they hid those promotions. We see scenes that take place later in the season, and unless they get demoted, they've hidden the fact that they're a Lieutenant Junior grade and instead put an ensign pip on them. So that was a really nice touch. I liked them kind of playing a little dirty tricks there and not letting us know about those promotions. That was clever, and I really appreciated that. We also see at the very end of the episode this mysterious attack on the Klingon ship that we first encountered in Voyager, the Lower Decks character who became the captain of that ship in that episode. It gets destroyed. He's killed along with his crew, kind of shockingly, by what I'm assuming is the big bad of the season. This kind of mysterious ending where we don't know where this thing has come from, what its purpose is, why it's destroying ships. I'm assuming we're going to see more of it throughout the season, but interesting setup that I don't know what to say a lot about because we don't know where that's going yet, but I'm sure the Cerritos will encounter it sooner or later. Well, from there, we should go to the Easter eggs that I was able to find in this episode. For Star Trek Voyager fans, there is a lot here for you to enjoy for sure. But before that, we do have another little change to the opening credits. Now, every season they do add a little bit more to that big Borg battle that we see in the opening credits. And this one, we have, the already numerous Romulan, Klingon, and Pakled ships, as well as the crystalline entity that showed up last season. Now we have also a Breen ship chasing a bird of prey, as well as, and this is my favorite, the whale probe from Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home, with the signature sounds from that film. So that's fun. You may remember there was that poster that came out for Lower Decks Season 4 that was kind of in the style of Star Trek IV. So this is just maybe a little bit of a nod to, Season 4, Star Trek IV. That kind of continuing that little bit of parallel there. So very fun. I love that. Those sound effects, they're so iconic. I love it. So as far as continuity connections and Easter eggs go, we have the space station at the beginning. It's a mix of kind of the regular type space station from Star Trek II, first seen flipped the other way around in the motion picture. We also have what look like dry docks that are kind of modeled on the dry dock first seen in the motion picture as part of that station. We have this character, Belger Tweakle, I think his name was, or something like that. He would appear to be a Rigelian. The USS Voyager, of course, its iconic look and design, along with the Voyager theme playing as the ship is revealed. The interior sets, like I mentioned before, we have bridge, we have engineering, Cargo Bay 2, which was doubled as 7 of 9's quarters, the mess hall, sick bay, astrometrics, turbolift, shuttle bay, all these various locations faithfully recreated here. And populating them are also these mannequins that are designed to look like the Voyager command crew. We have, of course, Janeway in the captain's chair, Neelix in the mess hall, Tuvok in sick bay, I think he was, 7 in Cargo Bay 2, and Harry Kim, I think, also on the bridge at one point. So that was fun. You can tell who these characters are supposed to be. And of course, the Rigelian caretaker freaking out because they were, mission-worn uniforms, paralleling screen-worn uniforms, right? Screen-worn costumes. So we get a reference to the cheese from the season 1 Voyager episode Learning Curve, the famous line from Tor's "Get the cheese to sickbay." And it is, of course, this cheese that ends up saving the day when Rutherford uses it to break the ship and keep it from being delivered to the Borg by some other Easter eggs that pop up shortly. We see when Billups and T'Ana are first Tuvixed, they beam off of Voyager. We see the Voyager-style transporter beam. Boimler discovers hidden behind a panel what they refer to as the Tactacian macrovirus. You may remember the huge viruses from the episode Macrocosm. The Tac were the alien race that Janeway and Neelix made contact with in that episode. It seems that the macrovirus has been named after that species. Mariner brings up that Pike thing we aren't supposed to talk about. Now, if you go by the stardate that Boimler mentions in that episode, I think that he comes from shortly after the Deep Space Nine episode last season. So that whole Pike thing has already happened. That happened during the run of Lower Decks season 3. So yeah, that is in the past. That is something that these characters have experienced. We see little animatronic Janeway Paris salamanders referencing when they got hyper evolved in the episode Threshold. And then we get the antagonist holograms that appear. Dr. Chaotica, the big bad from the Captain Proton holoprogram, most notably seen in the episode Bride of Chaotica, but first introduced in the episode Night. Michael Sullivan, who of course was Janeway's holographic lover, first appeared in the episode Fairhaven and then later in Spirit Folk. I love he gets a line later where he says he misses his wife. Of course, that iconic scene where Janeway is altering his program and deletes his wife. So that was great that he misses his wife. That made me laugh, cry. We also get the Fear Clown from the episode The Thaw. This was the clown that was in the planet-based virtual reality system that terrorized Harry Kim and B'Elanna Torres, and Janeway had to negotiate with him. Now, interestingly, and Mariner does mention this, he was never a hologram on Voyager, but some sadistic crew member or somebody uploaded that program or created a version of it in Voyager's computer, which is distressing to say the least. That's weird. Stuck in one of the macroviruses flying around is a clarinet. I assume that's Harry Kim's clarinet. He gave it up at some point and instead moved onto the saxophone. This macrovirus seems to have found it. And then we have the Tuvixed people. So this is the list that I came up with. There's a few more, but maybe didn't get names or anything. But we have T'Ana and Billups became T'Illups. Captain Freeman and Dr. Miglimo became Captain Dr. Frigleyman. Shax and Barnes became Shabarnes. We have the bartender Honus and Chief Lundy became Chondas. And Steve Stevens and Matt the Whale became Swalens. It's ridiculous. I love it. Anyway, those were kind of the major Easter eggs and references that I found in this episode. I'm sure there are many more. Please let me know what I missed. Just as a side note, I also love that there is some acknowledgement that Janeway's actions in Tuvix were because she was so far from home and cut off from Earth and the resources there that she kind of had to do that. It doesn't completely, wipe away the fact, as Freeman says in this episode, she straight up killed the guy, but there were some extenuating circumstances and they seem to give kind of Janeway that benefit of the doubt, which I think she personally, here it is, I'm weighing in on the Tuvix decision. One of the biggest arguments in Star Trek fandom. I think Janeway did nothing wrong. I think she saved 2 people. It's the trolley problem. I don't know. People will argue. People will have different opinions on that, but I think she did nothing wrong. But as Freeman says, they are closer to Earth. They have greater resources. They could try to find another solution. Now, in this episode, that other solution doesn't come. because of the circumstances of them all becoming Tuvixed into one big blob that is apparently non-sentient. So that solved the ethical issue, apparently. Anyway, there we go. Those are my thoughts on the first episode of season 4, Tuvix. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching, and thanks as always to the Patreon supporters for the channel. I really do appreciate it. I will see you in the next episode, which will be following very shortly onto this one, because of course the next episode came out on the same day, and that episode is called "I Have No Bones Yet I Must Flee," which may be one of my favorite Star Trek episode titles ever now. Thanks again for watching. See you next time. Bye for now.